Well, happy new month. Hope everyone is doing well. So basically, within the past couple of months, even beginning of this year, a lot of things have been happening on the continent. Great stuff, you might say. But one thing that very cute, like I've noticed about things that have been happening, amongst various countries on the continent is that most of these countries that have had this shift, whether it's the coups or whether it's the reforms that are happening in Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, Togo, etc., right? Most of these countries, they are not democratic states. They are not democratic countries, which is their forms of government are not really democratic. Or maybe it was, but the democratic regime was kind of forcefully taken out. And if you've watched a lot of my videos, I do infer a lot of times that democracy might not be the best form of government for a lot of African countries. And the things that are happening are kind of proving my points, which is what made me, I wanted to kind of look into this concept a little bit more. Now, like in a layman's term, democracy is a form of government where the power to make decisions, policies, and laws rest with the people. Keyword, the people. The people, the masses, the populace, whatever you want to call it, it is what it is, right? Now, you will agree with me that this has never been the case in any African countries. I mean, you can argue that it's never been the case in any country that practices democracy, but we understand that the intricacies of democracy is more prevalent in Western societies or in the developed world more than it is in Africa, right? So this term of democracy was kind of like forced on African countries, and the standard for it was set by other people, the West, and I think ever since then, a lot of African countries have been struggling to live up to this standard because of the pursuit of the developing or the developed world, or to become a first world country and to be like the Western countries. So it's like they've been pursuing it and trying to reach a standard that wasn't created by them, that the fabric of society is not designed to attain. And it's like they've been running in circles since the 1960s, which is the time most of these countries got their independence. And up till now, you can't say any African country is truly a democratic state. Now, where am I going with all of this? Now, my main point is, and I've touched on this a little bit, is that I don't think democracy is the best form of governance for every African country, for majority of them. Now, there has been a survey, and again, this survey is a year late, by Afrobarometer. Now, Afrobarometer is a very credible source. A lot of NGOs, international organizations employ them to do statistical surveys, especially when they're working in the country, to see, to measure a lot of stuff, right? So now Afrobarometer did a survey in 2024, and it was indicated that 39 countries on the continent showed a drop in support for democracy. Now, it is true that democracy is a popular form of government on the continent, which is okay. However, its support has dropped. And we can say that it's even dropped more in the year 2025, even though I don't have the numbers to show it. But with what we're seeing going on, we can say that democracy is, people are really eyeing democracy like, it might not be what it was said to be. So some of the reasons why these countries have kind of showed lesser support for democracy are because, one, it has really not promised what it said it would deliver to African countries. Now, democracy works for the West because they have the infrastructure, the facilities, the human resources, the technical know-how to kind of enforce and make sure things are going well. Give or take, you might say, oh, well, it's not really democratic. But again, it is the standard, right? However, in most African countries, we do not have the know-how, the resources, most of the tangibles, non-tangibles, and things that are required for a proper democratic state to function, we do not have it. But we continue to pretend that it's there. And it's not there. It's invincible. We don't have it, right? So democracy has not brought jobs, healthcare, none of that stuff to most African countries. Education, poor, everything. It's not working. Which is why most of the things happening now is popular, because the juntas and most of the military regimes are kind of being more effective nowadays than democratic states. Now, just to make sure, and I don't support forms of government that, of course, that don't give peace and don't allow people to express themselves, and no one is promoting an anarchy, or like a crazy form of governance or anything like that. I just think that even if countries in Africa are to choose democracy as the main form of governance, I think that it should be tailored to that country specifically. I think that there is room for democracy to function in different forms, and the standard should not be the Western standard, especially if it's within the continent. That's just my take. Any country can practice what form of government that works for itself. If it wants to practice democracy, that's fine. However, I think that the standard should not be the West bar, so to speak. It should be tailored to the country and to however it wants to make it function. They can call it whatever they want, a second level form of democracy, third democracy, whatever they want to call it, but as long as it's working for the people, so they're not struggling to reach a standard that they can't attain at all, right? So that's my point. That's my main point. Now, I also came across a video which was very interesting, right? So this video does not only point out the fact that democracy is not rooted in the fabric of society, which is why it can never be attained properly by African countries. It also kind of indicates, it talks about maintenance actually, and the take is very, very enlightening. Just take a look at this.
For maintenance.
Maintenance is, there is no direct English word for that. It doesn't translate directly to maintenance.
That's correct. How about you?
It doesn't translate.
That's correct.
But it translates to like take care of.
No, that's not maintenance. What is the one word for repair in Igbo?
Imezi.
Exactly. What is the one word for repair in You see, I'm driving you to somewhere. What is the one word for democracy in Igbo language? You don't. How about you? You don't. You're trying to practice something that is not in the concept of the language. There is no African country, and I've done it through Kenya, I've done it all, that has an equivalent of the word maintenance.
So from that video, we can see that, and I agree with everything on that video. I totally agree with the points that they made. I think that most of this word, they use language as the threshold, which is that when we don't have a word in the language to define this thing, how do we practice what we don't even have a word to describe? And that is true for a lot of things on the continent. We don't have the word for it. That means it was not ingrained in the society or in the fabric of society. It was not ingrained. It was not envisioned, which is why it doesn't function properly. So I kind of agree with the logic there. And it adds to my point as well. So, and again, just apart from society, right? If you look at our homes, most African homes are not democratic. Decisions are not made by the people. They are made by an individual, right? And just follow me here, right? So in your homes, like in most homes in the West, right? Sometimes the father will come, hey guys, or the mother, we want to go on vacation, where should we go? And the kids will have a say. That does not happen in most African homes. You do what the parents ask you to do. Most of the times you don't have a say. You do as you're told. And that's what it is. Same thing in most schools, right? When you're in secondary school, you're in boarding house, most of the decisions, I think the closest they get to a democratic state in high schools, it's like they have prefects in high schools in most African countries. They have head boys, headgear, all those things. And those are like the only way decisions are made by lower tier people apart from the teachers. So even in the day-to-day life in most African countries, democracy is not practiced, or the concept of it is not alive. So all in all, what am I trying to say is that democracy in Africa African society should begin to think twice about democracy. I think that it's high time that other forms of government are explored more. Well, even if it's democracy, maybe it can be a third, let's find a name for it, right? Basically, let's find a name for that type of a pseudonym, or like a whatever, right? But all in all, I think that democracy has not worked for a lot of Africa, and most people will agree with me. But again, I want to pose the question, right? If you're listening, do you think that democracy has worked for Africa thus far? And if you think that democracy is not working, what other forms of government or governance do you think can be the best for a lot of African countries? But if you disagree, let me know. And if you have other suggestions, let us know. And as always, this is Food Chess. Thanks for clicking. Thanks for watching. Till next time.